there's an evil entity in the house.
You are about to see real people
I was terrified beyond belief.
reliving horrifying paranormal encounters for the first time.
I truly felt it was like living in hell.
When skeptics become believers.
I always just thought it wasn't real. It was, just fake hocus pocus stuff.
I had a very myopic black and white view of the world. Now I'm talking to dead people.
I buried this for nearly 30 years.
Be prepared to be afraid.
Marker? Okay.
Before we purchased our house in Bloomingdale, I was living in a small condo with my husband, and it was very small and it was far away from both of our jobs. So we wanted to find a house that was closer to our jobs. The first impression I got was that it was very eerie. They had bushes that were overgrown in the front. The house needed a lot of work. I saw crumbling masonry work in the front and the back. The roof was old, the siding was old. We walked into the inside, and it was just the eeriest house I think I've ever seen, but I liked it. We did close on the house in December 1997, and I couldn't wait to get started on it because the inside was so dreary. Just being in that house, there was just something different. I couldn't put my finger on it yet. Of course, there was a lot of noises, banging, dragging. I just chalked it up, it's an old house. There are gonna be noises. I'm very skeptical with saying this noise doesn't make sense. Very shortly after we moved in, I just started getting a very strange feeling that something wasn't right. Every night I would go to sleep and I would have this nightmare. I was in the house alone and I had a very horrible feeling about it. I'd be at the top of the stairwell, and I knew something very ominous was at the bottom. And I would look at a shelf and something would fly off. And I would see a shadow at the bottom of the stairs. It would start to move up, and I'd hear breathing. You just felt as if you were going to be killed, attacked, something. And then that's when I would always wake up. And it turned out I had that nightmare every night for months. I had told my husband, I don't even want to go to sleep because I know I'm going to have that dream.
Patty had always been skeptical of the paranormal, but events in the house were beginning to convince her otherwise.
I went down to do laundry, and we have the biggest container of laundry detergent. And I did the laundry, put it back on the shelf. The detergent went back up in the kitchen, and when it was done, the laundry detergent wasn't on the shelf. I looked, and it was sitting 10 feet out into the basement, upright. I just tried to ignore it, picked it up, did the second load, put it back on the shelf. When I came down a third time, it was right back out in the basement again. That's probably the first time when I thought, it's almost like a mischievous child playing tricks on me. There was something about that house, and I had even said to my husband one day, you're going to think I'm crazy. I think this house is alive. There's something about this house. I don't know what it is, but there is. He just was of the opinion, if you ignore it, it will go away. He believed my dreams were caused from anxiety, moving into a new house. He just didn't buy into it and kind of turned a blind eye.
I find that skeptics will gravitate to rationality before anything else. In their mind, they have convinced themselves that it can't be anything other than something rational. So they will take it that, oh, it must have been this, or they'll find any reason they can to prove that it's not paranormal.
A few days later, I'm cleaning the house. We have French doors on our upper level going to the deck. And I see little handprints on the bottom of the window. And I told my husband about it. He goes, oh, you know, just forget about it. A couple days later, I saw them on again. My husband was home. I said, come here, I want you to tell me what you see. He looked and he goes, it looks like a child's handprint. One of the situations that scared me the most, and I knew I had to find out and get to the bottom of it, again, happened in my room.
Patty Haig started having terrifying dreams as soon as she moved into her new home. But the nightmares were turning into reality.
I dreamt of the child that I thought was in the house, and he bit me in the arm. And I woke up, I said, wow, that dream really hurt. And when I was in the shower the next day, I was bitten. Now, I couldn't fit that in my mouth to put that bite mark, and it was a small mouth. So that dream was a dream, but it wasn't a dream. I can't explain that.
It became more than a dream when old friends Roseanne and Joe came over to the house for a visit.
She was with a gentleman, and he was a big, burly, 6'3" contractor. Roseanne had mentioned the apparition, and Joe started making fun of it. I had asked him not to do that, and he continued to do that. The next thing we knew, and I saw it and Roseanne saw it, his stool was yanked out from under him. He landed on the ground. So, of course, we're like, Joe, are you okay? He got up and started crying. Started crying like a baby, and he said, Roseanne, we gotta go. We gotta go. Roseanne called me later and said, Joe said there's something evil in that house. When I fell on the floor, something whispered in my ear, you are going to die tonight. He goes, I'm never going back in that house again. And he never did. I just didn't know what to think. It can't be just my home. There's too much is happening. There's something happened around here, and I don't know what it was. I met my neighbor. She was walking her dog, I said, can I ask you a question? She goes, what? What? I said, do you have anything strange going on in your house that you can't explain? And she goes, what do you mean? I go, here we go. She's going to have me committed. And I just looked at her. I said, ghosts. Her jaw dropped. She goes, I can't believe you said that. She goes, ever since I moved in, she goes, things have been going on in the house that I can't explain. It turns out many people in that area were having experiences, but my house, everybody seemed to point to my house and said, but that's where it really gets very strange. I had to get to the bottom of this, how to find out, and I didn't even know really paranormal groups existed. When I Googled hauntings in Bloomingdale, I saw Mark's website.
I first heard from Patty back in February of 2008, and she was looking for us to come in and perform a professional scientific investigation. Now, during this time, we were doing audio recording, trying to capture EVP, which stands for Electronic Voice Phenomenon. Also, during the investigation, we had a video camera with night vision set up in the master bedroom, pointed at her dresser where she felt like she had seen things before. Patty was sitting on the bed nearby with one of our other investigators.
And really, I was talking, but no one was getting anything. But I looked at the dresser and I saw a white, almost like a mist or a shadow in front of the dresser. Look over there.
So the cameraman, the investigator, panned the camera around from the dresser to see if he could capture anything. When he panned the camera to the left,
Evidence of the paranormal was becoming harder to ignore at Patty Haig's house. Now a guest had been threatened.
You are going to die tonight.
Wanting answers, Patty had called in a paranormal investigation team.
so the cameraman, the investigator, panned the camera around from the dresser to see if he could capture anything. When he panned the camera to the left, all of a sudden, he captured what looked like a head with no features. You cannot see a face or anything, but it looked like a head with a hairline.
And it had very dark hair, and you can't see features of a face. It's bizarre, you see the hair and it's sticking in.
And then after a second, it seems to realize it's being filmed and it slides right out of the frame.
Almost as if this child realized and drew back.
So we were unable to explain that anomaly. We went back to the house, we recreated the conditions, we looked for reflections, we looked for anything that would have caused that anomaly, and we could not recreate it.
Now that we have technology and the things that we use to show the existence of life after death, the power of a skeptic has diminished. Their case is getting weaker and weaker.
After the first investigation, Mark realized this is enough to pique interest in a second investigation.
We felt that it was the land that had the activity more than Patty's house alone. So we made arrangements to bring in a ground-penetrating radar team to scan that area to see what they could find. And the results were very interesting because the radar operator said he found 5 areas of interest. And looking at the imagery, you can see the white spots that they found, that it was in his opinion that they could have been human burials still underground. It was our impression that this could have been a Native American site with circles, possibly a medicine wheel or other types of ceremonial circle used in their religion. If it's possible that if it was used for ceremonial purposes with the spirits, that might account for some of the activity that we were encountering in the area.
Once Mark and his team came in and did their investigations, activity did pick up in the house significantly, where it almost appeared that now it was taking more of a malicious turn for me. You just felt like you were going to be attacked. You felt like you were going to be murdered. I was pushed down my oak stairwell. I didn't lose my footing. All of a sudden, I was airborne, and I made a 90-degree turn, and I landed in the hallway. And I knew if I didn't leave that house, I wasn't going to survive in that house. It would have been a disaster for me to stay in that home. So when my husband got a new job down south, that was probably the happiest news I had in years. I didn't care if we had to live in a tent somewhere. I honestly didn't. I would have been happy living in a tent to get out of that house. The last day of the house, I stood outside the door, closed it, locked for the last time, and got in my car. I felt a lightness that I haven't felt in years. I felt like a new person, a happy person.
The house had finally convinced Patty that another plane existed, and it was too much for her to live with.
It was that location, it stayed at that location, and now I'm living in a place that is completely free of any kind of paranormal activity, and I would never go back, ever.
Skeptics of the paranormal often demand scientific proof before they will believe in the afterlife. But an intimate first-hand experience can lead to a dramatic change of mind.
So we lived in Toronto for about 4 years. We had it was a beautiful luxury condo on the lake, and everyone thought we had the best life going. But we were really unhappy, and looking back, we were unfulfilled.
Well, condo life for me was a little bit difficult because we wanted to be closer to nature. We wanted to have more of just a real connection with, the earth around us. And we weren't really feeling that where we were living. We went on the hunt for a house. And so I said to Jennifer, let's go out to this place called Brantford, which I hadn't even heard of before. As we were getting closer and closer to the house, we were getting more skeptical because it was kind of like a subdivision that we were driving through.
And we pulled up to this little house on the hill. We both instantly fell in love with it, and everyone thought we were crazy.
It was a very stark contrast to what we were living in Toronto. And when we got here, we knocked on the door, and this older gentleman came to the door. He was well into his 90s. And actually, it was the owner. The agent hadn't arrived yet. He said, "Oh, come on in, come on in." He was 94, and he wanted to interview everybody who was interested in purchasing the property. He really wanted the property to stay intact. And he said, "What are your plans with the house?" And I said, "Well, Jack, I think it needs a paint job, to be honest, so I think I might paint it if you don't mind." And he said, no, that's fine. Jack's wife died when he was in his 70s, I believe. And he believed that he would probably die soon after. He didn't expect to be here as long as he was here for.
Jack took a liking to Jen and Daryl and sold them the house.
We moved in September 30th of 2011. What we thought was a paint job turned into a complete gut job.
It was during the renovation that Jen and Daryl began to notice strange things.
Paintbrushes will go missing, keys will go missing. I had a book that went missing.
If we lived in a really big house, I think it'd be easier to kind of, but our house is very small, so how far can something travel?
When their complicated renovation was in full swing, what was supposed to be the easy job became the most baffling.
And there was one particular paint color that Daryl would put on, and the paint would not stick. It just wouldn't stick. And it would fall off, and it would clump off, and it would drip off. We thought, what the heck? So we took it back to the paint company. The paint company said, the paint's fine. I don't know what your problem is. So Daryl thought, well, maybe, he just thought, something came in his head, let's try a different color. He got the same paint in a different color, put it on, it went on perfectly. So we joke about the fact that Jack's wife was like, I'm not having that color paint in my house.
Although happy to joke about it, the couple were skeptical that anything otherworldly was actually happening in their home.
A lot of times when a family moves into a house, they'll do renovations, they'll fix things, they'll change things. A spirit that has been there for many years, they're used to a certain thing and they're used to a certain way that their house was. If you go there and try to create things and do things, they take offense to that. Like, hey, you know what? I was here many years before you and you're not gonna change this. And if you are, I'm gonna make it difficult for you to do so.
Daryl had never believed in anything paranormal.
I've always been a skeptic. I guess I would need to see evidence of that to believe that. During all the construction and all the chaos, Charlie, my little dog, he and I were the first two to move into the house. There are times where he'll just, for example, he'll be in the living room and he'll look out into the kitchen and he'll just stare and stare and stare and stare, and you're thinking, you're not staring at food, you're not staring at water, you're just kind of staring into the room and you're thinking, why are you doing that? You can tell he's looking, like he's watching something. And you kind of put your head around to see if you can see something too, but I don't see anything. He must see something, because I don't think he would stand and just stare for so long at nothing. So that's kind of strange, yeah.
But it was Jen's experiences that would truly turn a skeptic into a believer.
It just smelled like baking. Like I'd wake up and Daryl doesn't cook or bake. I'd sort of smell the air and I'm like, oh, someone's been baking, like vanilla, that very distinct smell of vanilla. And sometimes a very distinct smell of like apple pie. I was like, oh, it smells so good. And there would be nothing there. There was nothing that could have made that smell. You just sort of shake your head and go, okay, and I was still adjusting to living to the country. And I heard the cupboards, and again, at first I thought it was mice or, whatever, because the house was being renovated.
Daryl and Jen White fell in love with their little house on the hill, but after promising the previous owner they wouldn't renovate, they decided to do just that.
I heard the cupboards, and again, at first I thought it was mice or, whatever, because the house was being renovated. And there she was standing facing the stove. A 3D woman at the counter sort of humming to herself, preparing something. And And when I sort of squinted and looked a little bit closer, I could see that she was sort of filmy, smoky, sort of that, you know, iconic what a ghost would look like kind of thing. But she was there. I mean, I knew the hair color. She had these beautiful green eyes. I could see the figures. I saw a ghost.
Everybody has a different reaction to seeing the spirit when they first see them. Obviously, the first thing you do is you're scared. I don't necessarily think it's something that you have to fear, but I think you have to essentially take note as to why it keeps appearing to you. So maybe do a little research, maybe find a little bit about that property. Did anybody die in that house? Is there any relatives that look remotely close to what you're seeing? And then kind of just do your own investigations.
I wanted to authenticate my experiences and make sure that it wasn't, you know, all in my head. And I just knew when I said, I saw this woman in my house, that I thought, oh my God, they think I'm gonna crazy, or you know, they're gonna go, oh my God, these crazy like city people have had, you know, too much country air. And when I reached out to the neighbors, they said, oh yeah, I think I've got a ghost in the house, and I described her. Oh, that's Jack's wife. And they said, you described her a T, and then someone took out the photo album. I'm like, okay. That was Jack's wife. That was the woman. I recognized her, like, that's what she looked like. Found out that Jack's wife, quite tragically, had a stroke or an aneurysm one night. Jack was watching hockey about 25 years ago, and she said I wasn't feeling well. She got up to go lie down, and she dropped dead between here and the back bedroom. Apparently, she was a prolific baker. So that was a really big watershed moment for me that, yeah, I'm living with something. My life was about to change. As soon as I sort of admitted it, then it started to get like exponentially more frequent and powerful. The cupboard doors would slam and I would be in bed and I'd be like, Daryl, like, knock it off. And he'd be like, I'm not anywhere near them. And she turned around and looked at me and kind of smiled at me and then vanished. Okay, this is real, this is happening. The neighbor, Janet, had let me know Jack had passed. And then it was about 2 days later when the kids had called and said, would we be okay with him being scattered out back? So they came back here and scattered his ashes back in the woods where he was most happy.
With Jack's death, a new wave of paranormal events started.
When we'd moved in, they'd cleaned pretty much everything out, but there was this one chair that was down in the basement. The neighbors had said to me, oh, that was Jack's chair. It was this wooden chair that he always sat on outside and watched the world go by. And so I thought, well, it's ugly. So I tossed it in the garage and thought, okay, next garbage day, I'll get rid of it. And it would reappear in the house. Like we would find it in the basement or it would go back to where he used to sit. And I'd say to Daryl, why is that chair out in the middle of the backyard? He's like, I didn't put it there.
Jen found that once she opened her mind to the paranormal, her experiences became more powerful.
I went for a walk and I took the dog, and the dog started barking his head off. Barking, 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 and then he started staring up the hill, and I thought. So I turned my head and I looked up the hill. And there, standing there, I'll never forget it because I can still see his eyes, was Jack. Just standing there content in this like lumberjack plaid jacket that apparently, you know, was very sort of common and typical for him. He was there sort of in this fuzzy, kind of foggy state, but very 3D, very much alive, very much, you know, identifiable as Jack. It wasn't a shadow or a passing image, it was Jack standing there. So I said to him, I said, hey, Jack, you know, I'm so glad that all is good, and I promise you we're taking great care of the house. And then he vanished and we continued on with our walk. So it was a really interesting and unique experience.
A paranormal encounter changes many lives every day, and a lot of it has to do with the acceptance of knowing that something is there that is not supposed to be.
So I was that typical like Anglo-Saxon Protestant conservative person who had a great job. I had a very myopic black and white view of the world. Now I'm talking to dead people. All of a sudden, I accept and respect that there's a whole lot out there that we don't understand.
Once you know that there is life after death, you may treat your life a lot differently. You may live it differently. You may not take it for granted to know that in a split second in time, you could be in that same altered state. There's good advantages that come out of a paranormal encounter, and a lot of it is to appreciate life as you know it while you're alive.
Since Jack's passed, I haven't seen her, which is really interesting. So when Jack passed, I have not seen her since. I haven't smelt her, I haven't seen her, I have nothing. And I think because she died so suddenly and Jack stayed here for so long that I'm convinced that she was here the whole time Jack was.
A relationship between a husband and wife that maybe the marriage lasted 30 years. You don't want to be away from your partner, so there are spirits who will hang around and wait for that, and them two can live a life together in the afterlife.
We still call Jack's house and Jack's property. We've been here 4 years. I don't know if we'll ever stop calling it Jack's house.
As a skeptic dealing with the paranormal, there comes a point where rational explanations just won't cut it. When the paranormal becomes a physical threat, there is no choice but to believe.
Story 26, Greg, take 1, marker. Story 26, Danielle, take 4, marker. I've never had any encounters before. Never really thought about it before. And it's just something that, you know, I always just thought wasn't real. It was, you know, just fake hocus pocus stuff.
I met Greg through MySpace.
She thought that I was cute, so we started talking.
I have 3 children, Grant, Dylan, and Emily. They fell in love with Greg, and so did I. In December of '08, Greg opened his home to us.
It was a kind of a rundown building, but it was cheap rent and it served its purpose. Her and her daughter, Emily, came up on the bus, started unpacking stuff, and she was like, oh, you know, I can rearrange your house now and, you know, make it the way I want to. I didn't have a lot of stuff. I was used to the military life. You know, being in the military, you minimize everything. And with Danielle, it was just, you know, it brightened it up a little bit more. You know, there's more colors, more flowery stuff, and, you know, just a woman's touch, and it made it a lot better.
But this good feeling would not last long.
It was just the little things at first. We'd want to go out to dinner or something like that, and be like, okay, you know, time to grab the keys. Walk over, went to grab for them, and they're not there. That's like, okay, you know, who's got the keys? And nobody's got the keys. You search and you search and you search. You know, keys are nowhere to be found. Go almost back into the first location where I first looked for them. There are the keys, and it's like, no way. There's no way those keys could be there. Couldn't explain it.
Spirits will move things if they know that it bothers you and intimidates you. Sometimes they'll play games. They'll take the smaller objects because it takes less energy to move those things. And sometimes they could be sending a message. It's hard to really tell with them because there are a lot of them that are tricksters.
One time, we were sitting down and having cookies and milk.
Emily told me, she goes, Mommy, I have this friend named Michael. he likes to play with me. And I said, well, that's nice, honey. Would you like to share cookies and milk with Michael? She goes, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you just see the glass move like 6 inches.
6 inches to an empty space. This empty space beside Emily.
What do you say when that happens? You know, there's no good reason for something like that to happen, especially when she just got done saying, you know, go ahead, you can share your cookies and milk with them.
It wouldn't take long before the paranormal became more real.
Actually, a couple of days later, I had another experience myself. And all of a sudden, something grabbed the back of my leg.
Greg and Danielle Koch had begun to experience strange phenomena in their home, but were reluctant to believe they could have paranormal origins. The activity was about to get more extreme.
And all of a sudden, something grabbed the back of my leg and yanked me. I've never felt this before. It felt like they were trying to pull me off the bed. My whole world just got rocked. I turned around, looked back, and there was nothing there. And I looked at my leg where I got grabbed at, and I could see the hairs kind of like standing back up off of like if they were like, you know, condensed from where somebody grabbed me. It felt like a grown man trying to jerk me off the bed. I've never had anything so physical happen to me like that before. That's something I'll never forget.
Greg started to rethink their decision to raise children in the house.
Because if it can move me that much, you know, what else can it do? Finally, we were like, okay, you know, something's going on here. We had contacted the landlord, explained to her that we couldn't stay there anymore. And she was pretty understanding. She's like, I could understand, you know, this isn't the first time we've had people move out in the middle of the month, you know, as quickly as you want to move out.
It felt like a relief was off of my shoulders to be moving away from that place.
We made the move to Tidiu. The house was like 3 times as big as the place we were in, so we were loving it. It was a really nice house, 2-floor, big yard, you know, so we were really happy with it. And it was only 2 blocks down from the school where Emily would be going to. We moved in July, beautiful weather. The neighbors were real nice. They came out and helped me move the stuff in. I really did think everything was left behind.
And we started having experiences at the house that we're at now.
Started hearing like walking across the ceiling. And it's like, okay, we know nobody's up there. You know, we'd hear footsteps again, so I'd run up there and there's nobody there. I'd go back downstairs again. You know, you could hear him walking down the stairs. You know, thump, 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 thump. It just sounds like a heavy guy walking back and forth. And I'd run up there again, you know, just to make sure. there's nobody out there. It is very creepy feeling.
Maybe a house settling, you're hearing a creaking, but maybe a spirit where you're dealing with sounds, it's gonna be more profound. Spirits will violently walk and the whole house would shake. That's when you start to think, okay, that's much more than just a house settling.
We'd come back and, from out to dinner or something like that. And it just seemed like every cupboard in the whole place was wide open. Nothing was really disturbed in the house besides like the cupboard doors. Like there was no cans out of place. There was no, anything missing, like somebody would have ransacked the place. It was just every cupboard was open. Well, I was like, here we go again, I was like, the last place was quiet and now we got something going on here. And then, Danielle was like, I really hope something's not, kind of following me. I knew something was following us then. It just seemed like, from one location to another location, there is definitely something out there. I was in the bedroom. That's where I had my computer hooked up. I was playing a video game online. And she was out in the kitchen. All of a sudden, she calls me out there, and her voice kind of sounded funny. I was like, oh, okay, what's going on now? And she's standing in the middle of the kitchen. And she's got this, kind of a blank look on her face. And she's got a knife in her hand.
Greg and Danielle Koch had already moved once because of paranormal phenomena. Despite starting out as skeptics, the couple now believed in the dark side as the events became life-threatening.
And she's got a knife in her hand. She's got it up, kind of held like in a stabbing motion. And she's just standing there, and I'm talking to her. I'm like, Danielle, I'm trying to get her to, acknowledge me, to answer me, to at least turn her face and look at me like she was staring off a million miles away. That knife really made me nervous. And so I was like, look, you don't put that knife down. I'm gonna tackle you down to the ground and take it from you. She finally looked like she snapped out of it. She was like, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know, you tell me. I was like, you've been standing there for about 5-6 minutes now with the freaking knife in your hand. I was like, I was starting yelling at you and you weren't paying attention to me, you weren't acknowledging me. And she was like, I didn't hear you at all.
All I remember is it felt like a demonic force and I was fighting with it.
I was definitely scared because if it could do it there, what if it's gonna do it again where I wasn't around or if I was sleeping? So we both knew something serious was going on.
Unexpectedly, Greg and Danielle found help close to home.
We were kind of hesitant to say anything to the neighbors. And then they actually brought it up that they were part of a paranormal society. And I was like, you're kidding me. I was like, what are the odds that you guys are gonna be living right next door to us? And then, we told him what was going on, and we told him some of the experiences that we had, and he definitely felt that there was a dark presence in the house, that he was definitely worried about Danielle.
Greg invited his neighbors into his home to perform a cleansing ritual.
I would see them going around, and, she does spells and stuff like that to try to, encourage more good spirits and, good feelings and stuff like that and ward off, the more negative feelings.
With the house cleansed, the neighbors gave Danielle an amulet to ward off evil spirits and taught her how to perform the ritual herself.
Danielle seemed like she needed more of the protection. It seems like they're more, gravitating towards her and not me.
And that's been protecting me. So that's how I survive.
A lot of these things that we use as symbols. An artifact is not going to drive a spirit away as much as what's behind that artifact, what faith is being put into that artifact. Essentially, you yourself is the one that's exorcising the spirit out of a home.
And to be honest, it seems like it's working. There's a lot less negativity in the house. We're kind of, happy with living there as long as, we feel we're kind of safe. We're definitely felt like, we're surviving there.
Greg is a skeptic turned believer.
Before Danielle moved in, there's no such thing as ghosts. But, 5, 6 years later, and, I believe 100%, there is no doubt the spirit's out there.